Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here with us today for the beginning of our Up Against Amazon Institute. My name is Dr. Maha Hilal, and I am one of the coordinators of the For Us Not Amazon Coalition. Before we get into the introduction and our presentation on racial capitalism and monopoly, I just wanted to note a few things. One is that there are closed captions. In order to enable them, you should see a box that says CC. So simply click on that button if you need captions. Two, the Zoom link is the same for both days. So hopefully, if you are planning on joining us tomorrow, you should be able to use the same Zoom link. So just wanted to note that. Third, we do have some breaks built into the schedule. You should have received an email from our fabulous co-coordinator, Chris Garrity, this morning with the schedule, and you should see some of the breaks throughout the day. And of course, feel free to take breaks whenever you need to. We'll be here. Also, if you feel so inclined to tweet during the day, please use the hashtag Up Against Amazon, and we will put it in the chat. And throughout the day, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message or send Chris a message, and we will definitely try to navigate and help you do any problem solving. Finally, there is an email address if you have any follow-up questions after the training that you can reach us at, which is forusnotamazon@gmail.com. Hopefully you got the email and we will resend it again, the one I just mentioned. And we will be putting in the chat as well an orientation guide that we've created for this institute. Thank you so much, Chris, for really leading on this. And that is an orientation guide that will hopefully be helpful in getting you acquainted with many of the issues that we are going to be covering throughout the course of the Institute today and tomorrow. So again, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. If you want to message me or Chris privately, please do so. And we encourage you to engage, tweet about the information that you're learning. And, again, feel free to let us know if you have any questions. So I wanted to introduce one of my dear friends who actually got me into the work of challenging Amazon. His name is Danny Sendejas, and he is coming on camera, so he's right there. So Danny has been part of For Us Not Amazon for much longer than I, and has really, been carrying out and moving this work forward. So I'm really grateful to be working with Danny, and also for, the fact that Danny got me into this work in the first place. So we're going to talk a little bit about what For Us Not Amazon's work has looked like in the DMV area. And then we will transition into our first presentation of the day on racial capitalism and monopoly. So I'm going to hand it off to Danny.
All right. Thanks, Maha. Good morning, everyone. I am going to share my screen. What a great start, huh? So thank you again for being here. Let's start real quick. Can folks see my screen? If folks can do, I see it. Nodding. Cool. Thank you. So here we are, right? Kicking off this weekend's institute. This is I want to say appreciation for Maha and Chris for so much leadership in this project, and then also bringing this vision to fruition, right? And to give a little bit of background about our work, we are For Us Not Amazon, a coalition in Northern Virginia and DC for working people, immigrants, and people of color against an Amazon takeover of our communities. So here are some, just throwbacks to what we've been up to So we came together in late 2018, early 2019, is where we started organizing against Amazon in our area, knowing that it had chosen, quote unquote, chosen Arlington County as its site for its second headquarters. Before this announcement that Amazon had said that they had selected this area, they had gone through this whole, you know, PR process of placing and pitting communities against each other by getting them to compete on bids to basically try to attract their Amazon to come to their communities with their headquarters. And we, though, always knew that this area would be a priority for them, considering the proximity to government institutions, to other tech companies, corporations in this area as well. And of course, the influence that they want to have on government as well, or that they already have that they want to expand. And so we came together in end of 2018, 2019, because we knew that this process was happening without any input, that it was happening in backroom deals, that these discussions had been happening for years, particularly at the state level. And so we started organizing to expose that charade, right, that elected officials were enabling, claiming that this was a community, this was something that the community wanted. And so we began to mobilize, demanding public hearings, demanding no subsidies for Amazon, being against this takeover, right, recognizing the impacts that it would have on housing and other issues. And so we'll get into that a little bit. But as you see, and for example, in the top right image, where we have folks like Angela Peoples, Maha, and Yael, who were taking action, demanding public hearings. This was at an event where one of the only events where Amazon representatives were speaking like publicly, but they were charging, I want to say, over $100 for people to be able to attend this event. And there were no opportunities for free, right, or accessible public engagement on this, and having Amazon answer questions. And so there was an action to demand this, right? At the county level, the vote was actually delayed thanks to the organizing we were doing. Unfortunately, they still passed the subsidies, and we'll share a little bit more about that. But that is some of the background of what we have been doing as far as not Amazon. And over time, we have now gotten to where we are today, right? We're gonna go into just like some examples in a bit, but now I'll pass it back to Mahat to share a little bit about what's coming up today.
Awesome. So I think it goes without saying that, of course, this list of topics that we've chosen to have presenters speak to is not comprehensive in terms of the harm and destruction that Amazon is causing our communities. Nevertheless, we wanted to kind of bring a couple of topics through which there was a very distinct thread of capitalism and white supremacy, and really think about how all of these issues are connected, although they can sometimes seem disparate and separate. And especially when we're doing the organizing work, it's often the case that we're focusing on one issue and not the other. So we wanted, again, to sort of bring multiple topics together from which we could kind of create this underlying narrative of why these are a problem and what is the thread that runs through. So we're going to be starting with Maurice Weeks from ACRE, who's going to be presenting on racial capitalism and monopoly. Then we will move to Amazon Web Services, and Ryan Garrity from Athena will be presenting. We'll follow up with that with the topic of surveillance, and Stephen Renderos from Media Justice will be guiding us through that. Then we will have a presentation from Andrea Verdure on environmental justice. And let me see, I want to make sure that I don't get Andrea's organization. I want to make sure I get your organization right. She is from the People's Collective for Environmental Justice. So we're really excited to have her as well, because obviously environmental justice is really important and critical at this point in time. And then finally, we will just close off the day with some reflections and give you all an opportunity to ask questions, should you have any, and then talk about what tomorrow will look like. So again, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. And what I should have said earlier is, please also feel free to introduce yourself in the chat as well. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So now let's get into a little bit of the information of the impact that Amazon is already having in the DMV, right? But also recognizing that what's happening here also is happening in communities, not even just in the US, but like across the globe, right? And so some of the main, of course, there are more than these three main categories, but these are sort of where our work has been focused over time. And so one of them being housing and displacement, another being the collaboration between Amazon police and ICE and their role in surveillance, and then also subsidies and that they received or are working on getting or receiving from Arlington County and the state of Virginia, and then also the fight to tax Amazon, right? And so on housing, we know that the plans that Amazon has is to bring 25,000 workers. And so these are headquarter corporate jobs, right? So the workers are estimated to have an average annual income of $150,000. And this is already started, right? They've already started bringing workers, but it's going to be growing over the years. Whenever this announcement first came out, multiple organizations, including, of course, our coalition, but groups, for example, like African Communities Together, Tenants and Workers United, ACE Collaborative, New Virginia Majority spoke out about the concerns of increased rent. New Virginia Majority released a report about the expected impact, right, that this will have in Chirilawa and Alexandria, and the way that communities are at big threat of being pushed out. We are also seeing that Amazon is rapidly trying to expand its Amazon Fresh and Amazon Ghost grocery stores, and in communities, right, that are being gentrified, of course. And so in DC, that's been a fight that, for example, I know Chris and others in the area were involved in pushing back against some of that effort. And folks who are familiar with Bailey's Crossroads in Virginia, around Falls Church, right? That is an immigrant community, poor and work and low income and working people community, right? And we are seeing already a lot of displacement, but now they're trying to open up an Amazon Ghost store, right? Or it's in the works. And so that's a big threat that is impacting folks already. And then, of course, in Arlington, right, there is a lot of concern about Amazon in already basically exacerbating displacement. Arlington County in not this decade, right, but in the previous decade, was one of two counties in the country with populations of 100,000 or more, where what sociologists use the Simpson Index to track diversity. Where there was a trend here where the population of white people was increasing, while the population of people of color, and particularly Latinx folks, was decreasing. And so now, with, of course, Amazon getting here, it's getting worse and more challenging for people to be able to remain in their communities. I'll also share real quick, this will be covered more, of course, in depth in one of the sessions. Amazon has announced a quote unquote Amazon Housing Equity Fund. And so I just want to be mindful of like the word equity. They don't mean it in I think what we usually think about it as, right? They're talking about money, right? So this is a fund that Amazon is promoting, along, of course, with elected officials who are in their side, saying that it's a solution to the housing crises But reality is that Amazon is using this fund to, at the end, make money, as well as they're giving loans, as they're doing at the Barcroft Apartments in Arlington, Virginia, where they co-finance a property along with Arlington County. And so that folks have a better chance of staying at the community, but residents there haven't been engaged, and have also are really concerned about the rent increases that are still planned to happen. On another part that we've also been active around is on police and surveillance. In 2019, Arlington Police considered a partnership with Amazon Ring, and we fought that and we won. We pressured the county, and were able to receive documents about what the discussions were between the county and Amazon Ring. And so we were able to get them to not enter the agreement, but of course, we're still making sure that it stays that way. And so far in this area, there are agreements with Prince William County Police and Alexandria. We have also done, as the HQ2 announcement was announced, we fought against the subsidies. And like I said earlier, unfortunately, they did pass at both the county and the state level. But to give folks an idea, Arlington County approved $51 million in subsidies for Amazon, and then Virginia approved $750 million at the state level. And as folks can see, at the Virginia House of Delegates, the approval of the $750 million happened in just 9 minutes of debate. So again, this was something that was already in the works. During the pandemic, we also made public some demands, basically demanding that the subsidies be retracted. At the county level was where our push mostly happened. Unfortunately, just like in the fight to prevent the subsidies, there is a lack of political courage to follow the lead of communities from the current county board, and so they were unwilling to challenge Amazon around the subsidies, even considering the difficult circumstances that county residents are still facing. And this is a chart from Good Jobs First that has a subsidy tracker for different companies, corporations, and this is for Amazon. As folks can see, these are the top 5 states that have given funds to Amazon in subsidies, and Virginia is right there at the very top with $762 million in subsidies, at least, because there are various agreements that have undisclosed amounts. And so this is for the headquarters and often also the data centers that Amazon is expanding. And now I'll kick it over back to Maha.
So one of the stories of a worker that we learned about in the course of doing this work on challenging Amazon in the DMV was of a woman named Pashan Brown. And she worked at Amazon. And despite, Amazon's rhetoric around keeping the workers safe and, providing protective equipment, et cetera, during the height of the COVID pandemic, this actually was not the case. And Pashan was made to conduct COVID testing for her colleagues without the appropriate protective gear. So one day when Pashan was at home, she, as her sister has told us, woke up, made breakfast for her daughter, went back to sleep, and then never woke up. And of course, this was a devastating loss to Pashan Brown's family. And when Tina Brown, who's her sister, tried to contact Amazon, they were very slow to respond, weren't really willing to provide anything for the family, any sort of, accommodations or, explanation of what happened. And furthermore, I think they provided some counseling for Pashan Brown's daughter, but it was about 2 to 3 months of counseling. So really unwilling to deal with the consequences of making their workers do COVID testing. And so the family of Pashawn Brown has been actively seeking justice. Tina Brown, who's been pretty outspoken about her sister's case, has wanted to get in touch with Jeff Bezos, and we've been trying to conduct social media campaigns to really raise awareness of Pashawn's case. Obviously, she's not alone, and there were numerous workers that not only died from COVID, of course, but also injuries on the job. But that is to say that, worker rights, which we will be talking about tomorrow, is extremely important and unfortunately has been completely neglected by Amazon. And so Pashawn Brown's family now has been left without her. And Tina Brown, her sister, has to take care of Pashawn's daughter, as well as her mom, who is disabled and elderly. So it's really unconscionable that Amazon treats their workers with such disregard. So we will be, updating folks, especially those in the DMV area, on some next steps in Pashawn Brown's case. And if you want to engage with us, please, please, please reach out. I know that the family could definitely use support, especially as they continue to seek justice in her case. So one of the things we recently worked on with the leadership of Harriet's Wildest Dreams, which is an incredible Black-led DC organization, was the name of the auditorium at the Martin Luther King Library in downtown DC. Because Jeff Bezos donated $2 million to the library, which is obviously a very small amount considering how much wealth he has, the library trustees had voted to name the auditorium after Jeff Bezos. Of course, most of you, if not all of you in this training, realize the irony of naming an auditorium after a man who stands for the exact opposite of what MLK stood for. So through a lot of public awareness raising, as well as petitioning, we were able to, get the library to at least, retract that decision. Of course, Jeff Bezos came into the mix as well and suggested that the auditorium be named after Toni Morrison, which of course, Toni Morrison was an, incredible individual, but at the same time, it was still the fact that Jeff Bezos was the one calling the shots. So this was really a fight about who gets to decide on the names and spaces, especially in DC, that, Black residents, especially, right, use and is part of their legacy and history. And so this was a very successful campaign, and we were able to really push back and put pressure to get at least some recognition of why this was a problem. So, we will see how this continues to evolve, obviously, because Jeff Bezos, has donated a lot to various organizations in the DC area. So, these sorts of fights, I imagine, will continue. And, they're not as necessarily overt as other ways that Jeff Bezos and Amazon are interfering in community. But at the same time, they're very symbolic of what Amazon's presence has meant in the DMV. So that's why it's important to do this work. In the DMV, we have been doing as much organizing as we can. We definitely need much more capacity, and we're hoping that some of you attending this institute will join us in challenging Amazon. I myself live on the same block of Amazon's HQ2. I haven't been back for a while, so I'm not sure how the neighborhood looks like now. But needless to say, of course, Amazon doesn't come anywhere without radically transforming the communities in which it occupies. And so it's really important for us to push back and challenge Amazon in the DMV and across the country. But now that we have HQ2 in our neighborhood, it's really important for us to fight back because we know how disastrous Amazon's presence has been in communities across the country and indeed across the globe. So for those of you who want to get involved, and even if you just want to stay on top of what's happening in the DMV, especially as a very uniquely violent site, please do find us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram. We are also live streaming this institute from Facebook and Twitter today. So while we will send out a recording later on, you can also find them and refer back to them more immediately on our social media. So thank you all so much. I'm going to hand it back to Danny, who is going to introduce our incredible speaker, who will talk to us about racial capitalism and monopoly.
All right, awesome. Also very excited for this next speaker in this session. So I'll introduce Maurice Weeks. Maurice hates corporations. He fights them for a living to create a better future for Black and Brown peoples. He lives in Detroit with his wife and adorable baby, Charlie. And I hope we all hate corporations too. So I'll pass it over to you, Maurice.
Thanks, Danny. And thanks, Maha, and everyone for inviting me to chat with y'all a little bit about racial capitalism, monopolies, how Amazon fits into it. I'm gonna maybe take a little bit of a step back and talk a little bit more about kind of the scope of Amazon as a way to get into what monopoly is, and exactly how they operate in this current iteration of capitalism that we're in. Danny read my new bio, which is short and to the point, but I am also the outgoing co-executive director at the Action Center on Race and the Economy. We do a lot of stuff fighting Amazon, including our members of a coalition that For Us Not Amazon is also a part of, called the Athena Coalition. It's a national group of folks who are taking them on. And Acre does a bunch of other racial justice and economic justice work. So let me see if I can share my screen. Can I share my screen?
You should be able to now.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna pull up some slides here. Some love for Athena in the chat. Cool. All right. So bear with me as I go through these slides here. I swear I'm not a Luddite. I know how to use PowerPoint. All right, here we go. So whenever I think about Amazon as really sort of the quintessential monopoly, I like to start at the top. And this sort of helps describe how simple this concept is. I think a lot of, if you read in the Washington Post or the New York Times or something like that about monopoly, if you can stay awake for longer than 5 minutes reading about it, then all power to you, because it's extremely dry, extremely boring. You're like, which horrible, terrible, like college professor wrote this boring article about what monopoly is? Like, I don't really care about that. But we don't have to actually think of it as like a complex economic thing. It really is as simple as this thing is too big and these people are too powerful. So I want to talk about just exactly what that looks like. And we're going to focus on Jeff Bezos here, even though Jassy is the new president. Bezos obviously looms large at the organization, to say the least, is the person who built this out, and really, no matter what Amazon says publicly, is still the brains and kingmaker behind this corporation, and so many others, as we'll get into. So here's this ugly man. This is being recorded, isn't it? This is being live streamed and recorded. Let me tighten up Here is this gentleman wearing a clashing blazer and jean shirt for some reason. Former CEO, this is the story that Jeff Bezos tells about how he came to found Amazon. Said that he was just, he's just doing some research like we all do, just dinking around the internet, found out that web usage was growing really, really fast and thought, how can I, Jeffrey Preston Bezos, take advantage of such growth? And he just came up with a brilliant business plan that, we should start by selling books. And then, it spiraled from there, it grew, and that's how he built this empire. Very sort of pull yourself up from your bootstraps. What an amazing American hero to come up with such an amazing idea that everyone uses. Of course, that's entirely BS. So Jeff Bezos comes from a rich family. He got a $300,000 gift from his parents. My parents have never had $300,000 cumulatively throughout their lives. And he's now worth, I think this is fluctuating, obviously. At the time I wrote this, $192 billion was his wealth. Amazon over $1 trillion, of course. He recently bought a home that many of you know about. It's worth $165 million. I love to put that in the context of the recent enormous $2 million gift that he gave to the library. His house cost $165 million. By the way, on that $2 million gift, if you made $50,000 a year, it would be the equivalent of you donating about 73 cents to build that library, just FYI. Billions, trillions, once you get into the illions, the numbers start to blend together. Like, how many zeros is that? I really like this video as a visualization of just how huge that actually is. And I can
my last video, I
edit
10,000
the
grains of
screen
rice.
share to make sure that you can see this. This person visualizes this using a bunch of rice. Share computer sound. Okay, so what's this video?
In my last video, I counted 10,000 grains of rice, where each grain of rice was $100,000. And that was to show you the scale of $1 billion. Well, a lot of you guys asked me, well, how much does Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos have in terms of rice? So that was my mission. I went to Target, I bought a digital food scale, I came home, and then I weighed the rice that was worth $1 billion from earlier. I did the math in my head, and I went to Costco. I got the rice, I brought it home, and once I brought it home, I went to work. I also want to say that I have 5 families that are going to take this unused rice, so it's totally not wasteful. Okay, so the moment you've been waiting for, 100K, 1 million, 1 billion, Jeff Bezos has 122 of these, or 58 pounds of rice. If each grain of rice was 100K. Like, look how big this is, guys. I'm gonna show you the scale here. I'm gonna put a keyboard in just for fun. Look how deep that goes. That's insane. This is Jeff Bezos' new house that's $145 million in LA. And then, oh my God.
So I love the reaction at the end. Oh my God. It's a shit ton of rice. This dude has a lot of money, more money than we can possibly conceptualize. So that's starting from the top. This is sort of the mastermind behind it. Get in your head for a second of the kind of person who would be willing to amass so much money that if he bought every single thing that he wanted for the rest of his life, his children's lives, and his grandchildren's lives, he would never be able to spend that amount of money. So this is the same brain who's created this corporation that we're fighting. And then what does this corporation look like? What is the sort of revenue streams? How does it work? So obviously we know a tremendous amount about the retail products. And that's really how Amazon, to both the government, our local and federal governments, and to the world, sort of portrays themselves that, we're just a store. We were selling books. Now we sell, paper towels and diapers and all this other stuff. And that's it. And really the revenue streams come from so many other different sources. So as you can see here, they have Amazon Web Services, which is just a little 9% there, but actually we're using Amazon Web Services right now on Zoom. You couldn't use the internet actually without using Amazon Web Services. It is sort of when people reference the cloud, it is the cloud. It's the thing that most of the internet runs on. And I really do say most, they kind of invented it. Third-party sellers, we can talk a lot more about that. I probably won't, but businesses, if you come up with an idea and you really do invent something that people want to buy, you have to sell it on Amazon, or you are not going to sell as much as you would. They are sort of the place where literally the majority of things are purchased. So of all things purchased online, literally Amazon has 2/3 of them, almost everything that's purchased online. When people go to look for something online, they start with Amazon. The majority of people start at Amazon first and then go to other places if they go to other places. And then lots of other stuff, co-branded credit card agreements. It's actually, I'm sort of brushing over it, but that's actually super insidious. Imagine a corporation this evil teaming up with a bank who obviously well-documented evil. You can imagine all the wealth extraction that they're going to be scheming and getting up to. So that's sort of the full picture. I should have said at the beginning, if there's stuff that, as I'm going through our questions, you're like, huh, he said that, and I wonder if he could say more about that, please just drop it in the chat. I can address stuff as I go on here. So I'm going to get into a little bit of each of these businesses, or each of these pieces of their business here. It's a quote from a friend that just talks a little bit about how Amazon retail works. So, you know, they don't want to dominate markets, although that is a sort of path to how they get to being as powerful as they are. They're more interested in replacing markets, though. So they want their corporation to be the infrastructure that all commerce, the totality of commerce runs on. So when we're talking about them as a monopoly, we often say, like, you know, this isn't a storefront, it's more like the railroad. So everyone has to use this thing. They want to make it so that it's impossible to avoid them. And if you try to avoid them, they'll just buy you outright, and then you're no longer a factor. So that's their goal, to be the underpinning thing of the entire United States retail economy. Retail economy, just things that people buy and sell. Between 1/3 and 1/2 of all goods sold online. They have 2.5 million sellers. They have this is actually over 150 million people who are Prime members right now. It's the place that people buy and sell things. That is sort of the beginning and end here. And if you're a small business who wants to sell something on Amazon, which most small businesses do, you have to follow their rules. Now, that's really important because it means that your pricing, where you store your goods, how you list your goods, the fees that you need to pay Amazon, how much your goods ship for, what payments you're allowed to take, where your goods appear in a search result, the pictures that all of that stuff that you might think of as core to selling a good that you make is actually decided by Amazon. And they can change it at any time they want, and you have to agree to that in order to sell on their site. And if you try and break one of those rules, you can be penalized either by no longer being able to sell on their website, or in a more sneaky way of just having all of your stuff demoted. So you might be like, why are my t-shirts not selling? Well, it's because you didn't actually put the things up in the way that Amazon wanted to. So even if people are searching for your exact thing, Amazon puts it somewhere in the 3rd or 4th page and not the 1st page. You might be thinking, do they really do that? Yes, they really do that. Seems like it should be illegal, but yes, they really do that. So here's the other, I said, you know, if they can't figure out how to become the sort of underlying thing for your part of the economy, they'll just buy you. The other thing that they can do is just copy you. So I just sort of compiled a kind of random list of things that are under Amazon Basics. If you've ever shopped on Amazon, you know what Amazon Basics is. I should say, shopping on Amazon, I do not shop on Amazon very often. And also, we're talking about what a monopoly means. It means that there are not a lot of choices, especially for working people. So people shouldn't like beat themselves up if they have bought something on Amazon. It's often the cheapest place to buy stuff. Like if you're like making a working person's salary, like you should get the cheapest shit. It's not on you to defeat this $1 trillion corporation by yourself. But so here's some Amazon basic stuff that's just random things that Amazon now makes. They have manufacturers that make this for them. So you see muffin tins, knives, foam rollers, tea kettles. They have their own baby diaper rash I discovered recently because I have a young child. They have a bat catching device that you can put on this outside of your house if you have bats. Just really random, broad set of things. And the way that they decide which things these are is they look for little areas in the economy where there might be folks who are searching for specific things. And Amazon thinks if I make this, I can take over the majority of people who are buying this. So you might not think of the market for silicone nonstick baking cups as something that anyone is paying attention to at all. But Amazon is. They're using all of the data that they force you to give them as a seller and determining that, actually, if we came in at this price point, we could wipe out all of the other sellers and get the majority of sales really, really easily. And that's what they do for lots and lots and lots of different goods. And then buying companies. So all of these companies, plus dozens more, have been recently bought by Amazon. So we know about Whole Foods. Amazon, in addition to Whole Foods, is starting their own grocery store, which is popping up all around. But pill packs, like, packaging prescription drugs for folks, Zappos, shoes, Twitch, something that I'm not young enough to understand, but something with streaming and something. I don't know. Someone explain to me what Twitch is. Ring video cameras, which there's a whole thing around, was a company that they bought. Audible.com. This is a common practice of monopoly, of buying up folks who could be considered competitors to gain as much of the market and as many purchasers as you can. So we mentioned Amazon Web Services, and I said, it's hard to use the internet if you don't use Amazon Web Services. This Gizmodo article I would recommend folks taking a look at to just give you a scope of what kind of lengths this company will go to and just what kind of hold they have on us. So if you just Google Gizmodo block Amazon, this will pop up. This person tried to say, all right, in addition to like not buying anything on Amazon, I'm going to boycott Amazon by no longer using Amazon Web Services. And here's just a small list of the websites that you could not use if you stopped using Amazon Web Services. So I don't know about y'all, but I basically would not be able to operate in my life if I couldn't use some of these websites. At least it would be a huge difference for me. And it's more than that. The federal government uses Amazon Web Services for a bunch of stuff. So, people renewing their driver's registration, like sort of basic things. They're all running on this infrastructure that is the cloud that Amazon controls. And it's their huge cash cow. So 77% of their operating profit comes from this part of the business. There's not really threat from any other competitors, and it's not really visible to most people or possible to really effectively organize around. So, trying to say to everyone, we need to stop using Amazon Web Services requires you to explain what a web service is and then explain how it works and why Amazon running all of it is a problem. This insulates a lot of Amazon's profit from any activity by folks like us who want to really break them up and destroy them as a monopoly. We mentioned, Maha mentioned an Amazon employee who was really killed by the company. We know the company also recently killed folks in the latest rash of tornadoes where they forced folks to stay inside of their warehousing and killed 8 employees there. Amazon has a lot of employees. They're the second largest employer in the country. Over 1 million employees worldwide, and the makeup is not really super important. The one important thing, though, is that they really are not a good employer. So from safety complaints to religious discrimination complaints to lots of racist complaints, you would not believe some of the stories. Some of the most insidious are, of course, them killing their workers, like in a tornado or through COVID, them jokingly serving fried chicken and watermelon during a Juneteenth for their employees, them blocking Muslim employees from praying during breaks. All of these things are things that the company has actually done, and it is sort of the signs of a company that routinely treats their workers poorly, has terrible workplace safeties, anti-Black, and anti-union, of course. They actually are one of the most dangerous employees. They're on the Dirty Dozen list. They have 1 in 10 of their workers get injured. 1 in 10 of their fucking workers get injured. That is huge. So the treatment of workers, obviously based on wealth extraction. It's just a little, basic socialism, I guess. Someone in the chat, what is a web service? Okay. Yes, that is pretty much it. Yeah. So the ability to be able to sort of quickly store and then deliver content to lots of different computers, other places on the internet, is what a web service essentially does. And that content can be something like a movie, like Netflix uses a web service to do that. Or it could just be something like literally a web page, like being able to load a web page really quickly for another person. So sort of conclusion, it's an evil company, obviously, but that's not the end of it. So this company is one that strategically is extracting wealth from people, whether they're workers, consumers, other small businesses, our local and federal governments, lots of folks where there's a pot of money, they want it. We didn't even really touch on their environmental record, their record collaborating with the police, bullying municipalities. Danny mentioned their Who Wants to Be a Millionaire type game show that they did, trying to force all of these people to give them as much money as they want, all these different municipalities. And we talked about Jeff Bezos at the top and how particularly evil he is, and I really do mean that. But it's not just Jeff Bezos isn't uniquely evil. That is to say, Amazon's not evil because of Jeff Bezos. If Jeff Bezos got hit by a bus and Jassy was really in charge, Amazon would be the same. If Jassy then the next day got hit by a bus and random other person was in charge, Amazon would be the same. And that's because there's a structural thing going on, and that is kind of what monopoly is all about. So I like this really succinct definition of what a monopoly is. So I went to, as a sidebar, I went to graduate school for economics, and when we got to this section of the curriculum, it's like super confusing and overly complicated. And I kept thinking, like, is it really that complicated? Like, were people really like doing like these equations to figure out what a monopoly is? And the answer is no, it's not really that complicated at all. Literally, if you have the power to set the terms of the interaction, you are a monopoly. So that means you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be like monopolies of old where you were the only company and anyone who else who tried to come in, you would stop them somehow. You don't need to have 50% plus one of the market. You don't need to be the place that everyone goes. You just need to be able to be so powerful that you can set the terms of the interaction. So instead of municipalities asking you what you're going to deliver to the area, you get to ask them to give you tax breaks. Instead of sellers being like, wouldn't you want to sell my item on your website so that you can also make money? You get to demand that sellers do something to sell items on your website. So that's setting the terms of the interaction. And their abuses make all of the monopoly makes all of their abuses possible. So imagine for a moment, you are a small business and you sold diapers online and you sell them for a fair price because you're a good person. You know that working people deserve a fair wage. You know that we shouldn't source materials from bad places. So you sell them for a nice fair price. You make enough to feed your family. People get good quality diapers. And then all of a sudden Amazon comes along and they have the Amazon Basics version of your thing for a quarter of that price. And they're willing to take a loss for literally 20 years on that. They'll wait you out. They'll take a loss for as long as they want in order to push you out of the market. So what do you do then? You can either worsen your workplace standards, say, all right, well, to keep up with them and lower the price, I'll have to pay my workers less. I wouldn't want to do that. You could use cheaper manufacturing and say, all right, well, to keep up with them, maybe I'll source materials from conflict areas or something like that. You don't want to do that. You can just quit the business, like probably, or you can sell to Amazon. The fact is, even the fact that you're in this situation is because they have a monopoly, right? You're forced to make a decision. You can't outmaneuver them. They're so powerful that they're setting the terms of how everyone in the market operates, right? That's what a monopoly is. So here's this man again. So I want to note that this is not, they don't necessarily, in the past, corporations would really try very hard to not say things out loud that could be construed as admitting that they were a monopoly. So even remotely construed that they were admitting that they were a monopoly. Bezos, on the other hand, actually does not care at all. Here's a clip from the House Judiciary Committee hearing that was last year with him talking about the corporation. Maybe the clip doesn't work. Instead of showing the clip, who wants to hear this guy talk anyway? His quote is, there are multiple reasons why we might buy a company, but the most important is market position. Literally saying the thing that we're thinking about is not some business strategy, not some business plan that we wrote up of where we want to go, what we want to sell. It literally is just, is this company powerful? Can we afford them? Great. We're going to eat them and become that powerful. And he said this to the federal government. This was under oath at a House Judiciary Committee meeting. The fact that he can do that and he feels fine and safe doing that is another sort of note of how powerful this company's monopoly is, to the point where our elected officials not only don't have the bravery and guts to take them on, but they're afraid that taking them on will cause a cascading effect in the economy that would be difficult to come back from. That's not true, by the way, but they're afraid of that. This is heinously, this dude calls that the Gazelle program. So approaching business partners in the way a cheetah would pursue a sickly gazelle is not a good guy, all right? I don't know what to say. Like, obviously, that's not a good thing to say. He's a bad guy. I'm going to skip this part. This is when Bezos was talking about creating AWS. he essentially said, I'm going to skip the clip, but he essentially said, you know what? I was just sitting back and I noticed no one was doing this. And I thought, let me start doing this. And it was amazing. I had no competitors. And that's the end of the story. Of course, that's not the story. They aggressively pushed other competitors out and were so powerful at the time of launching AWS that who would compete with them? You know, other corporations are not stupid. Other people are not stupid. So getting to the landing spot here soon. So I want to note that their monopolized power really turns into and is political power. So as y'all know, especially in the DMV, they spend a lot of money and time and energy focusing on sites of political power. They've given a ton of money to local and federal politicians. In their hometown of Seattle, they have several times just tried to buy the entire city council, literally just like put their own slate of folks in. This is the Amazon slate of people several times. They will continue to try in the beginning. And then what we just talked about, there's their intimidation of elected officials to the point where elected officials are afraid that they're too big to fail and we shouldn't take them on. Or we're going to create a huge problem in the economy. Of course, this is ahistorical. So we used to break up monopolies all the time. So here's just three that were like bigger than you could possibly imagine. Standard Oil, the Bell System, American Tobacco Company. These were all like enormous, enormous corporations to the extent that, to a similar extent that Amazon is. And these laws are still on the books. They need updating because like, obviously, the people who came up with the laws in the time of the American Tobacco Company did not know what a web service is, but we can update them. We have some stuff on the books that we can actually push forward to deal with the realities of what monopoly means in the future. I'm going to pause for a second because there's a question in the chat about, does Amazon tolerate the presence of Walmart in consumer culture? And will they compete at some point? And it's really interesting. These are both of these companies are huge monopolies. There's a little bit of a difference in the types of things that they do. You know, Amazon has an immense, like almost larger than FedEx delivery system. They have web services. They are a site that the majority of people, businesses sell their goods on. And for the most part, this is, you know, changing with Whole Foods and their sort of dip into their own stores. But for the most part, they don't have storefronts. So they're not trying to necessarily come into a small city and push everyone out. Walmart's model is similarly insidious, where they, for years, looked for places where there's a weak storefront model. So businesses that sell a small percentage of goods and people have to travel to other places to get them, or communities where there are 6 businesses that people need to go to, each 6 of them every single week to get something, or places where there are no storefronts for 20, 25 miles. And Walmart decided, let me find the central location and come in there and destroy all of the small businesses around there, so everyone has to come to our store. So they do compete. Obviously, they both sell things. If you ever search for something online, that's 2 places that will always pop up. But it's a little bit different. Amazon's not trying to get storefronts in all of the places that Walmart is trying to get storefronts, and Walmart is still pursuing the strategy of getting storefronts in lots of places. That is something that they will continue to do. Walmart's not really trying to create the delivery infrastructure that Amazon has. Amazon really is getting a fleet of planes, a fleet of trucks, a fleet of drivers, a fleet, all of that, like to rival FedEx, UPS, the United States Postal Department. So it's a little bit different models. So tolerate, I think either of them would probably prefer if the other was gone. But that's probably true of all corporations. Hopefully that answers your question, Anne. So important to realize, again, in the spirit of breaking down the complexity of what monopoly is. Monopoly is just outsized corporate power, right? So U.S. economy has been structured by rules that either privilege or exploit based on race. The more concentrated the corporate power, the more privileging and exploiting based on race that happens. And since monopolies are at the top, they set the high watermark for all of that that's happening. Here are just some monopolies here that I decided to put on this slide. So we talked about a few ways that, in terms of systemic racism, monopolies kind of reinforce some of the systems that exist that screw over Black people, Indigenous people, other people of color. So they're workers, they're businesses, for consumers. All are worse off as corporate concentration gets more and more concentrated. All of the outcomes for all of those groups of people get worse the more the corporations concentrate. And this is empirically true. And we can just feel this, right? Like for workers, Amazon comes to your area, they become kind of the only show in town. And you see work standards, wages, et cetera, change to match what everyone in the neighborhood changes to match what Amazon offers. For businesses, we see Black businesses have real trouble breaking into the market because they can't sell on Amazon as easily as other businesses. It's impossible to really outcompete Amazon at scale. So you're forced to kind of, incrementally grow along with as the company lets you. For consumers, you have limited offerings. You have markups in your local store, your Whole Foods, if it's the only grocery option, has huge markups for goods, and there's nothing you can do about it. So now what? And really, y'all are the answer to now what, I should say. So we have to break this company. This is my belief, and the belief of Athena, that if we want to get to the world that we want to see, that some better form of a democratic economy, some breakdown of systemic racism in our economy, we have to break up this corporation. It simply can't exist we can't see those things without breaking up Amazon. And Amazon is not going to be the last monopolistic racist corporation that probably we'll all have to get together to try and break down, unfortunately. But they are really an important fight to have, because right now they are the largest. They're the thing that touches everybody, whether they want to or not. And they have their eyes set on more and more and more and more. And I think that folks in the DMV have unfortunately gotten to see that firsthand as the corporation has chosen y'all as the site for HQ2. So that's our goal. We need to break this corporation up. We need to hold them accountable for what they're doing. And I will say that is a fight that I've signed up for. I signed on the dotted line. And I also know it's going to be a long time, right? Like, I've fought corporations for a really, really long time, most of them way less powerful than Amazon. And it doesn't take weeks or months. And we all have to be ready for that fight. And what gives me hope is groups like For Us Not Amazon really taking the power right to Bezos and other folks' doorstep. So I'm with y'all 100%. Hopefully this was helpful, and I have time for questions or convo or whatever you think, whatever we need to do. Maha.
Yeah, sure. It would be great if you could take questions. Just want to note that I am going to stop the live stream now. So folks, if you feel a little more comfortable asking about the live stream, just know that I am